I want to welcome all of you to, this is our third annual DSD panel. We've done this, we've been doing this with the show at Newport Beach. All the fine folks like Chip, our producer, really does a great job. Also working with people like Richard Beers and Bob Levy to assure that we keep you guys as well informed as possible about the developments in the world of DSD. I know that there are a lot of questions about that kind of thing that come up. You'll be glad to know that we're trying to allocate as much time as possible for Q&A. So if you have questions...
Let's go right to it.
Not yet. You'll have an opportunity to ask those questions, and we have put together a really remarkable group of panelists, once again, to make sure that you've got the best possible people in the field to talk to you about it. And they come from various aspects. We have hardware folks, we have software folks, we have people like Chad who are in the business of actually distributing DSD download as a format. So if you've got a question about DSD, you ought to be able to find an answer here, okay? I'm going to set things aside, and what we're going to do is we're going to start by, I think I'll start on the far side with Rob Robinson there. We're going to walk through and I'll have each person introduce themselves. I'm going to step aside from the podium, and Aaron and Chad can introduce themselves from the podium, okay? Rob, we'll start with you.
My name's Rob Robinson, and I'm with Channel D, and we make some products that actually are part of the DSD market here. We're exhibiting at the show room 912. Channel D was actually the first company, despite what you might have read or heard somewhere, to provide a standalone computer audio product, and that was at Rocky Mountain Audio Fest in 2006. And this coming Rocky Mountain Audio Fest will be our 9th in a row. So we've been in computer audio and really kind of made a tiny wedge in that market starting in 2006. That was pure vinyl, and that's really years before any other company had another computer audio software product. It also featured an iTunes integration feature, and we found out that a couple of years after that, we introduced a product that people were buying it just to do the digital file playback. And so then we released Pure Music in 2010. And actually 3 years ago, to this date, at this same expo was the first introduction of Pure Music with DSD playback. So we were also the first company to provide a computer audio music server software product that would play back DSD native. And we actually were working with Andreas on that to deliver the software side, and he had the hardware side in terms of the DAC. And then finally, that product was facilitated by an innovation that we developed that allowed getting DSD format files to display in iTunes using a proxy technique. We filed a patent application on that in 2010. And actually, this week we just received word that it was scheduled to be granted this week. Not allowed, but granted. And I've just been so busy, I haven't had a chance to call up the law firm to find out if it was granted yet. But that's the DSD and iTunes. So, you know, we're really interested in DSD, and we also have products that integrate with the analog world of vinyl. And everybody that knows me knows that I'm really a big booster of vinyl as well, for a lot of reasons. But thank you.
My name is George Klissarov from Exasound. I'm the founder and president of the company. Exasound is located in Toronto, Canada. That's where we design, develop, and manufacture our DACs. We started back in 2010. The first major project for us was the development of proprietary asynchronous USB interface that can handle DSD 512. We don't have DAC at this point to use it, but as an interface it was ready in 2010. With the help of this interface and the subsequently developed proprietary software drivers, during the past few years we managed to introduce to the audiophile community several exciting devices. In 2011, we were the first one to release consumer-oriented 8th channel DXD DAC. The challenge was, of course, the bandwidth required for an experiment like this one. 2 years later, in 2013, we introduced the first DSD 256 capable DAC for audiophile use. And later in the same year, 2013, we did the first 8th channel DSD 256 DAC. And our development effort through 2014 continued with the introduction of DSD 256 to the Mac platform. That was a bit of a challenge because of the specifics of the sound system of Mac operating system. I'm very excited to announce that we will be releasing very soon a new driver technology to Mac, which I'm going to say in a moment. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Great.
How many Red Sox fans do we have here? One? How many Yankees fans? Come on! All right. He's from Boston, I'm from New York.
You're taking my 5 minutes away from me, you know that. So, I'm Jared Sachs, and I have two hats on here. Some of you might know me from Channel Classics Records, because I have my own record company for classical music, and I have done good over 230 recordings in DSD, stereo multi-channel. I live in Holland. I met a nice Dutch girl there about 40 years ago and just never left. Anyway, 2 years ago I started downloading DSD from my own recordings, and it was a mindset, you know. You're going to give the consumer exactly what you have. I mean, for 120 years it's been a cat and mouse game, yeah? We go up, you go up, you go up. And all of a sudden you don't have an excuse anymore. So now, indeed, you can get exactly the same quality that we're getting. And it's an exciting time for all of us. But I wanted to start a download site and do it, at least do better than what I thought should not be done. So I started a co-op site called nativedsd.com. So 250 albums are already on there. There's over 800 already committed from my own record company, Hyperion, Harmonia Mundi, London Symphony, and I've got about 20 companies already. And this is native, which is what it says it is. These recordings are all tagged. They can be bought as separate tracks or complete albums, and they have all the complete metadata. And we've started, for those companies, to offer 128 FS, DXD, or 256. And even wet your tongues even more, I've created a fictive label called Just Listen. And labels or anybody are now supplying these high-resolution files, and you can try them. It costs nothing, and you can download them directly from the site. So take a look at Just Listen, and there are everything on there from 128, 256, DXD, stereo, multi-channel. I'm not going to say what's better, it's not even important at this moment, but you can decide for yourself, because you can start to download them now. These are short tracks, but the labels have supplied them. We have to get the conversation going, communicating from, hey, this is my experience, what do you think? It's a co-op site, actually, which means all the labels get into the back end themselves. They can add video and reviews and even set their own pricing. And I'm really excited about it. In the next few months, we're not only expanding in the number of albums, but working closely with the hardware. Obviously, we need each other, helping each other, linking with each other, doing promotions together. And you know, it's going to be, in my opinion, a prime site for everything to do with DSD. You know, 130 companies are already offering DAC, native DSD playback. And people like George with multi-channel. I mean, I'm a real multi-channel fan, and it's really difficult. My only feeling is, you know, once you've heard it, you can't go back. But it's the problem getting you guys to hear it. Or actually, I mean, I've done hundreds of demonstrations around the world, because Philips asked me to do that in the beginning, way back in 2001. And it's always the man standing up, is how do I convince my wife to put those 5 speakers there? And you know, it's, maybe there'll be a good headphone coming out in the future that you'll buy the multi-channel downloads. But if you do have the opportunity to hear it, when it's done right, I'm sure I can convince you to. At the end of the day, we, you know, for DSD, we only need to convince the rest of the world what we hear now, and they just have to have the opportunity, and that's getting difficult to find that. Thank you very much.
Go ahead. We'll come back to me after.
Chad Kassem.
Yeah, go ahead, man. Y'all just go on down the line.
My name's Jonathan Tinn. I own Playback Designs along with Andreas Koch, and rather than go through all the technical achievements of the company, I'll leave that to Andreas to explain. I'm a huge fan of DSD. I'm also a huge analog fan. I have another company which we manufacture turntables, so I could tell you that it's not a war between the two. They're both incredible and should both be embraced. So I'm going to pass it on to Ted.
I'm Ted Smith, sort of the new kid on the block. I heard a multi-channel DSD demo in 2001. Perhaps you were in the room when I heard it. And I'd never heard music reproduced like that at all. So I became a DSD fan, started getting a real stereo at my house, and to me, DSD seemed obvious and easy. And on the audio side, everybody was always arguing with me, so I decided to, when I just got the bug to build a DSD DAC, Andreas told me that DSD is anything that when you low-pass filter it, you get what you want, and that's what I needed to build a DAC. So I built a monster DAC as proof of concept to convince myself that I wasn't nuts, and it sounded good, surprise, surprise. And then Gus Skinnis introduced me to PS Audio, and then the challenge became to take something like this that cost me $10,000, $15,000 for a board down to something that could be sold. I've let them do the manufacturing, marketing, and sales, and I hate to say it, but they've even helped me get it to sound better. And if I talk anymore, I'll talk for 45 minutes. So.
Andreas, come on. Andreas is next.
There's two takes. There you go. Take the podium.
My name is Andreas Koch from Playback Designs, and my background is technical engineering. And I pushed the digital audio envelope right from the beginning when it started in the early 80s. I was working at Studer and working at very challenging projects like sample rate conversion. Nobody knew how to do it there. Digital noise suppression or digital tape recording even. I switched over then to Dolby and was the first digital audio engineer that he hired. Was working on AC1 compression and what then became AC3, an early incarnation at that point. It became the standard for DVD, video, and movie audio. I went back to Studer and worked more on digital tape recorders, 32-track professional stuff, and hard disk recording. It was still early at the time, and it was very challenging. Hard disks were $2,000 and 100 megabytes at the most, and very slow. But we started recording 32 channels on it just with PCM. But that kind of set the stage for my gig then at Sony, where I was hired in the mid-90s into the SSCD team to develop the DSD authoring tools. DSD was totally misunderstood there, or not understood at all, and nobody knew how to record it and edit and how it would sound. So the objective at that point was to demonstrate the DSD format as such, what the potential is of the format. So we could not compromise in any way and do PCM or any other format. We had to really reinvent the wheel and do the DSD processing in DSD, gain control and crossfade, all trivial operations in PCM became really a challenge. But that's where I built the Sonoma workstation, which is still used today in the market by many people to produce SSCD. Included converters, can record up to 32 channels with gapless punch in and punch out. So if you multiply that by 3, it becomes really 72 channels capability. And that was done in the late 90s, early 2000. And you know, with 10 years there developing all that stuff, and I developed a lot of algorithms and technologies that then later on I condensed into products, consumer products, under Playback Designs. You know, the MPS5 SSCD player and USB DACs. That's all native DSD processing with a lot of other unique technologies in there.
Okay. Yep.
I think you're starting to get the point here. We've got some true recording heavyweights. George down there, Jared, the incredible Andreas. Kubala is modest, but if you use his cables, you realize he's arrogant as hell. We got Chad, who's an industry standard, and he supports all the great music. I'm not one of these techie guys you dig. I just use this stuff, and I use it to the best of my ability, and I lead with my heart. I trust my ears, which is, I would have you make that your mantra when it comes to audiophile gears. Forget the advertisements. Man, if you hear it and it's doing it, do it with it. I don't hang out with guys like this except that I'm lucky, and I learn a lot. And I guess I would say that I'm up here to represent the musicians. I think I've recorded more jazz live than anybody in the planet Earth. Well, I'm pretty sure of that. And I work with club owners, like the guys at Blue Note and Birdland, etc. What do I know about recording? Very little, except that I do a lot of it. And I probably have something on the order of, and I hope there's a financier here in the audience, about 5,000 albums of all the great jazz musicians ready to go. And it wouldn't take a whole lot of money to get Sweets Edison and Red Rodney, and you can just figure out the rest, Sarah Vaughan and Ella Fitzgerald. It's a privilege to be here with people like this. And I'm glad you care enough to be here with us. Joseph Kubala.
The arrogant one. Joe Kubala, Kubala Saws and the Cables, which has absolutely nothing to do with my reason for being here today, except for the fact that it introduced me to an industry, and it gave me inspiration when I saw people like Ray Kimber doing IsoMic, and Peter McGrath doing his efforts, and Jim Merod doing his. It got me excited about the recording process. A way to get closer to the music kind of thing. And so my journey, as I've tried to figure out what my style and what my methodology would be, has brought me through analog tape, and it's brought me through PCM and high-res PCM, and eventually to DSD. And I've sort of standardized my efforts at this point on DSD/analog, in other words, recording and tracking in DSD, and then mixing and mastering in the analog domain. So anyway, that's why I'm here today, is maybe to just share a little bit about those things.
This is Aaron's next.
Hey everyone, my name's Aaron Levine. I'm with Sony Electronics. Been in the industry for about 15 years, so I'm a baby compared to all the experts up here. But what we want to actually do, and this is the evolution of what you see not just with DSD, but with music of itself and high resolution. It's not necessarily about one format for Sony, it's about all the formats. It's everything above CD. We need to do something not only as a company, as Sony, but as an industry and as a room full of enthusiasts to save the quality of music. And we're doing that on multiple levels. Since September, we've introduced a series of products. Some of them dedicated just to high resolution. Others are hybrid that actually support everything from multi-channel home theater sound as well as high resolution audio. We just released quite a bit of products about 4.5 weeks ago that encompass a wide range of prices as well. And so a lot of what we're doing as a company now is how do we work as an industry? How do we take a group of companies that have very different focus, but yet we're all in the same place? And that's how do we save music, and how do we save it at a higher quality? It's not about MP3, it's about quality music, no matter what you listen to. And yeah, I know this panel is about DSD, but for us as a company, it includes DSD, includes double DSD, but it also includes everything above CD quality and high resolution. We have to do everything we can as an industry, as a fan base, as enthusiasts, which is how I got into the business, to save this, because we have generations of consumers, much younger than me, that have never heard quality music. And it's not about a pair of headphones, it's not about what playback device or the phone that they listen to music or the streaming service. It's about they've never been exposed to it. They don't know what they're missing. And so we as an industry, and Sony as a company, has put forth multiple initiatives, not just in the US and not with just the music labels. I mean, we've talked with, of course, our Sony Music colleagues, but as well as Universal and Warner, to how do we fix this? How do we get quality music out to the masses? What can we do? How can we do it? And how can we take the industry along as well? And so for us, with this whole series of products, the Z1 ES, I know it was just featured on the cover of Stereophile magazine. It's about all the formats. It's about what can we do to take every format, make it sound better. And of course, most importantly, how can we promote high resolution audio? How can we record? The bottom line is you have to listen to better quality sound.
Okay, sure.
Chad?
Hello, my name is Chad Kassem. I own superhighres.com and Acoustic Sounds. And we started superhighres.com about a year ago, and now we have over 1,000 titles of pretty much mainstream pop, blues, jazz, classical. And we're adding titles every day, and we're gonna maybe start doing some multi-channel. I think we're gonna do Vanguard, multi-channel, and maybe Mercury and a few others, and see how that goes. Anyway, we're working with Sony Music, and also we work with Sony Electronics, partner, and trying to work with them on their great electronics and their vision of the next step in high-end audio. I mean, we need to keep trying to improve the quality of sound. And we also work with Universal, and we also selling Universal downloads from Universal to Canada. And also, it looks like this is all going pretty good. I mean, like the business just continues to get better as the more download stuff, the higher quality stuff and the more popular stuff we get on the web. So, and then, also the Pono thing and Apple, it looks like they're going to try to also get involved in this. And we also noticed that, we think that we need to introduce this to the younger crowd. We're all getting older, pretty much everybody in here.
Speak for yourself, Jim.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but we all getting older, and we need to introduce some of the younger people to things better than CD, better than MP3, and get them involved. I mean, the younger people are really getting into vinyl, which is great. And if we could just get them into, some of this high-res stuff, I think this will be really good for all of us. I think it's kind of happening. It'll happen. And another thing we noticed is when we've put some bands, or a lot of people approaching us and they want us to put their music on superhighres.com, and we're like, well, we never heard. I mean, we'll put anything of high quality if it was done in DSD or high res. But sometimes it's like, well, who is this? We'll get to this band when we get a chance. But we've noticed that we put on bands like Elephant Revival, and the Band of Horses, and some bands that we really never heard of, and you know, they went to the top #1 sellers on the site. You know, so we're like, okay, you know, keep an open mind and try to get them up a little quicker and things like that. So, you know, like I say, I'm kind of into dinosaur rock and the old, good old stuff. There's so much good old stuff that I don't need to learn too much about too much new, but we were trying to have it all. I mean, we have classical, blues, jazz. We recorded a lot of stuff in our church. We've had a concert, a blues concert now for 17 years, and Gus Guinness comes to he's been to about probably 90% of the concerts and recorded them direct to DSD and surround. And plus we've recorded to half-inch analog tape, and at some point we're working on getting all that out on the site. So it would be like pure DSD in an acoustic space that you just can't beat it. I mean, it's the realest, most intimate, acoustical, beautiful church. And we've got like 17 years of blues guys, you know, a lot of them passed away. And at some point, we're gonna get to working on that and get that up, because that will really, it's about as good as it gets. So anyway, we're real happy to see the growth. Dave Robinson's really pushing DSD real hard, and you know, part of screaming from the rooftops, and everybody's working together. So Sony's doing a lot, everybody's working together, and it's just continuing to grow. And there's so much equipment that's coming out. I mean, you know, like the Astel and Kern, I think Sony's promising a Walkman in a week. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. We've been bothering about it, but it would really be awesome to have a reasonably priced, you know, small portable device with DSD, and I know that will happen, and that's going to really help things. And we're just happy with the growth of it. I think it will continue to grow. I mean, we see it growing the more titles we put up, and in between vinyl growing and super high res growing, it's audio's getting better, you know, for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Chad. I really appreciate all the panel putting up with all of our interesting logistics, because I thought that rather than chop the number of people off too short, I'd rather have an embarrassment of riches, so that when you ask your questions, you're going to be hearing from the best. And before I go any further, I want to recognize Mr. Ray Kimber, who is with us. Ray of Isom Mike and Kimber Cable. Ray, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to come up and talk for just a minute about what you've been doing with Isom Mike and why you handle DSD. Would you like to say something?
I would.
Because Ray has really been one of the pioneers in this.
One that likes crazy. Yes, and I'm a little bit crazy. So I believe that I was almost by accident an early adopter of DSD recording, and this was thanks to Graham Brown of Zen Mastering in Vancouver, Canada, and he introduced me to a bunch of really crazy people. And because I had some extra money and didn't know any better, I tended to buy a lot of stuff that I didn't really know how to use, and then had to figure it out because I had so much invested in it. And it started out with some little experiments at the university, at Weber State University in Ogden, and I just wanted to figure out some things for my own amusement, but I knew that I needed high-resolution recording to figure it out. And so I went to the university and said, look, I want to use you guys as guinea pigs, and if we make any money at it, gross, not net, we'll just donate it back to the school. And so years later, that's resulted in new choir risers, new Steinway pianos, fixes to the air conditioning systems to quiet the hall down. So, and we've just kept pushing on this a little bit, this crazy ISOMIC experiment. And so we're recording 4.0 at pure DSD, and playback is right through this wall if you haven't gotten a chance to go over and listen to it yet. And if you spend 20 bucks on a disc, the school gets 20 bucks. And that's good for everybody. But oh my gosh, the people that, I mean, this guy who I called in desperation from the Hilton in New York and said, you know, there's this click every so often. And he said, oh yeah, you left this cord out. Because I didn't realize the feedback loop function of the plot. And and then Yuki-san back here, oh my gosh, we have really had some fun times. And Chad, I mean, there's little funny stories how we all connect, but it all keeps pointing to higher resolution and better enjoyment. And so, by all means, get out there and do the downloads and get the stuff new. We already have our discs, some of them up on Cookie Marenko's site. Is Cookie here?
She was here last year.
No, she's here right now.
She's here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And then we're going to get going with Jared, with Native DSD, and so we are really going. And I'll say something that I said 2 days ago is that I am absolutely delighted to have an industry heavyweight like Sony get their high fidelity mojo back.
Yes, indeed.
So,
Yes, indeed.
so thank you.
Yes, thanks. So Yuki is here. Where's Yuki? Yuki, you must stand. You must stand, Yuki. Yuki is highly involved with what's happening in the higher resolution audio elements here, and he's been, oh yes, this is the movement towards HRA that was announced last year by CEA, the initiative to finally get away from trying to spray paint a turd and move to something that's better. If you're laughing too much, then you haven't heard it yet. Because what we have found, the people, the community you're seeing here, this group of people is really special because every one of the people that we have here is somebody who has materially contributed to your well-being. We're here because we've heard it. We were like scouts way out over the horizon, and we've come back and we said, you need this. This is where we are, and I'm not kidding. That's, for me, that's from the heart. When I first heard DSD, which was back in September of 1998, I was we were the first magazine that was invited to go to Mobile Fidelity and hear DSD. I remember it very well because Tim DeParavicini was there, Ed Meitner was there, Ayataka Nishio was there. It was everybody who had any notion of what was possible, and we did the A/B listens. I've told this story every time I talk about my history, and it permanently transformed me. I mean, it's very similar to what Ted was talking about. You hear it and you go, well, okay, that's obvious. What have we been doing up until now? Because I spent about 10 years spinning my wheels trying to make Red Book CD sound like something before I was giving up. And that's when John Wood of Mobile Fidelity called me and he said, you know, you need to come and hear this thing. I said, well, you know, the magazine is researching 9624. And he said, forget it. He said, I want you to come down and hear DSD. And I said, what's that? If that question, what's that, sounds familiar, if your reaction to DSD is, what's that? You're about the same place I was in 1998. And I actually bought a plane ticket, flew down. Scott Franklin of MFA and I, we drove there. And we were the first to hear it. And when I heard even early generation DSD chipsets compared to the analog master, which was right there, when I went back and forth between them, the first thing that went through my mind, and I've been in audio engineering since I was in high school, was this is the first advance in almost 50 years. This is better. It's not just okay. This is better, and we're just starting. It was just arriving. And so that's really what's represented here. We want you to understand that here we stand, 1998 until now, so it's over 15 years later, and we're saying this is better, and you need this. And we need your support to keep building the waves. So the guys like Mr. Chad, who deserves a trophy.
He really does.
He really does, because Chad was the one who gets it and is putting it out there. And guys like Jared at Channel Classics, Native DSD, heck, people like Jean-Eric Parson at Opus 3 Records, DSDfile.com. The people who get it, they're putting it out there. It's already out there now. 2L, of course, yeah. Morton has been big time into this. He's been a big supporter of it. And so what?
Ray Kimber.
Well, yeah, Ray and Isomike. I mean, the Isomike SICDs. I got a double handful of them.
Let me give some kudos to one other label, and that's JAV Recordings. Anybody know those?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Vidor Mass, that Sansel piece, recorded in DSD on Studer gear, unbelievable.
Scary.
Yeah.
And those of you who've already been up in the positive feedback room where we've been playing, if you've been in the PF room, all you've been hearing is DSD. I've been playing single, double, and even quad DSD in that room because I wanted you to hear it. Excuse me, question?
Well, there's obviously a big buzz about DSD, and that's why this room is full. Right. But as audiophiles, we want to understand as well as experience.
Right.
For the most part.
Right.
So I'm trying to get an understanding when people say 90% plus or more than that of everything that's ever been recorded is done in PCM. And even native DSD files that are called native DSD files are converted from PCM to native DSD. And what I've heard from recording engineers is that there's something versatile about the PCM process that that allows a little bit more manipulation and creativity of the music. But there seems to be a movement that's saying, or experts that are coming around and saying, hey, I was a PCM guy, but now I'm hearing DSD, and somehow I'm convinced. So I'm trying to sort a lot of this out and to really make sense of it as well as my experience.
Exactly, and that's an important question. I'm going to let Andreas talk about that.
I can just give one piece of the answer from a technical point of view. The major difference between PCM and DSD, which makes them incompatible with each other to some degree, is that PCM is basically targeting a flat response up to the Nyquist frequency, the limit of the PCM format, and then it drops or rises in a sharp edge. Anything sharp edge in nature creates problems. Whether that is visual or audio or anything, radar, people know that from the radar dish, it creates problems, and that kind of points out the digital ringing effect that's due to that brick wall filter. DSD was basically defined to counteract that, the major disadvantage of PCM, the brick wall filter. So the response of DSD is very gradual. It's flat up to some degree, and then it rises or decays gradually or gracefully. And that follows a lot more the characteristics of our ear. There's no sharp edge in it, and that's where the difference is. So in order to preserve the DSD character, or really bring out the full character of DSD, we have to be careful with involving PCM in the production chain, and that's where the incompatibility comes. It's much better to use analog masters, analog mixing consoles, analog tape recorders, and then convert directly to DSD. That usually ends up with a better result. And it always does. I'll leave it up to...
Is there a way to identify the recordings that are done that way? I mean, is there some way that... These
It should say so in every damn album that you buy. It tells you this, you know.
Well,
They don't always do that. They don't do that.
The trouble also is, you know, a lot of recordings are done in analog mixing consoles and analog tape recorders, everything analog, and then they use outboard gear, you know, just for a little bit of echo and so forth, not realizing that internally they use A to D and D to A converters, and so you go into PCM without even really noticing it. Exactly. Exactly. So,
and that was your problem. What about that? And he just explained it.
Thank you.
Excuse me, question over here.
I just wanted to gain a better understanding on the timing distortions of PCM, because it's my understanding that the high transients of sound should exist for maybe a millionth of a second or whatever it is, and once we've made it exist for 192,000th of a second, say, it's existing for too long and it's not giving us a good picture image-wise because those transients are hanging out too long. What would you say about the time distortion in PCM versus DSD? It's something that Gus Guinness had told me about, and I hear it, and I just don't know how to explain it.
yeah, you know, the transient response is very, very important, but it's mathematically very difficult to describe. So we only can really go at it intuitively, but intuitively we need to be transient true. You know, if there's music, music is full of transients. There's shorter text creating gazillions of transients, and you know, the wider the bandwidth of your transmission channel is, the more transients you capture, and that's where DSD really shines, because it has a 1.4 megahertz bandwidth. The DSD-A1X, whereas PCM chops it off at, you know, whatever the sample rate is, half of that. That's really the difference.
So 1.4, is that half of 2.8? Is that side
Correct.
by side?
Correct. Yes. So
I want to add something here, if I might. What you're not taking fully into account, and most people don't, why would they, is that the best possible recording one can ever have of anything is either a single mono mic or a perfectly in phase pair of truly nail it to the wall mics.
Right.
And everything that happens after that is simply the attempt not to erode or harm the beauty of what you caught in phase, you dig? So I think it was David who, in his own delightful way, was talking about painting shit. You can't shine shit, which is usually what people try to do with the Pro Tools, etc. You record it right, even in 16:44:1, it'll still sound great, and it gets better up the food chain, the sonic chain. You go.
Right. Question over here.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on the first question where we were talking about the provenance of the recordings, you know, what was recorded now, right?
I can speak to that actually.
But I want to go to the back end. So is there really any consumer equipment out there that states it accepts DSD over DOP that actually keeps it a single bit?
Well, I would
do we really
suggest,
know whether that's true?
yeah, as a matter of fact, both Ray, let's have Ray and Chad can both address questions of provenance.
Well, and first of all, I'd like to give some recognition to Mark Waldrop, because he's the one that actually started using the word provenance to describe the entire background of the chain, so that you would know how it was recorded, how it was processed, whether it ever went to analog equalizers and back through another set of stuff. So, and while Mark and I disagree somewhat about DSD, the fact is that he's pushing for higher resolution, and he and I serve on the CEA audio board, and I think that I may be the only one that serves on the board that's here. And I can tell you that the audio board is intensely focused recently on making sure that high resolution audio gets its due, and I can tell you that we've been getting more than just faint whispers from the recording side of the industry that the information that you guys want to make a good decision about the provenance of a recording is very much on people's minds, and they are working to figure out how to do it. And I think that we're much closer than we think to having that information available when you go to buy a download, that it will have some information about where it came from and how it got to the point that you're clicking that buy button. So the CEA is really working on it, and props to Mark Waldrop for being on that board with me, because the board has figured out that if the two of us agree on something, they're probably going to do it or they'll never hear the end of it. So you're welcome.
Very quickly, because provenance is a huge question, I'd like to ask Chad to come up, because Chad is actually one of the heroes of high-end audio when it comes to dealing with provenance and labels and questions. Maybe, Chad, you can talk about some of the challenges there.
Well, we try to get all the information we can, and when we get the information, we try to share it, or we share exactly what we know. And you know, on our reissues, first of all, at superhighres.com, the first thing that we put up on our site were our own recordings or our own reissues, and we know exactly, you know, everything about those and how they were made. Analog Productions, our label, we use, you know, it's about 99.9% of the time we use the absolute analog masters. Now, there's a lot of other people that say they do that, and sometimes they do. That's all I'll say. Sometimes they do. You know, they claim it, and but I deal with all the major labels. You know, I mean, the way we can explain, you know, the Sony tapes that own RCAs, those are on the East Coast. That's why we use Sterling Sound for all of those. That's why they won't send them from east to west. So the Sony owns RCA, it's mastered at Sterling. Universal, half their tapes are in New York, half of them are on the west. So if the Uni tapes are in New York, Sterling does them. If the Uni tapes are in the west, Kevin Gray does them. And the Warner Brothers tapes are on the west. Now there's other labels that aren't in any of those cities.
That's for sure.
Okay? So they're not, oh, and when we do things in Europe, we use William Mackey. So sometimes if you see something where the master tapes in Europe and Bernie Grunman's mastering it, you don't have to really ask any questions. They're not going to send a master, very rarely, especially if it's a big band or something famous. It's, you know, if it's a small label or something, maybe. So, you know, you can kind of answer your own questions. We're talking, downloads is kind of different, and I guess this is what this seminar is about. So they could master it from the, you know, master in England and put it up on the download side. Anyway, to go back to, the first thing we put on our download site, superhighres.com, was our analog productions reissues or our acoustic sounds recordings, APO recordings, and we know, you know, everything that went into the recipe on that, and then and we share it. So, and we always use the master analog. There's a couple things that there wasn't in analog, like Susan Tedeschi album. There's just a few that all it was a digital CD master or high res, and you know there's you know, it's easy to be honest about it when you're using the masters all the time, you know. But other people, you know, they're going to be vague about it. So as far as like what we get now from the major labels, you know, a lot of it's trust. You know, we're not sure. I mean, we're telling them if we want to know all the details, and when we find the details, we're going to post it. And I mean, that's really important to us. And the major labels are fixing to include that when they give us the download. They're going to tell us all the information at the same time, because it's going to be hard to go back. Like if we do 1,000 downloads it's hard to go back and find out the exact information. But anyway, we're trying our best. It's not easy. And all we can do is our best and try to really harp on the labels to give us that information. Right. And it's starting to happen. And then they know that we won't accept, we want it to be done the way we need it to be done. Now, every now and then there's a mistake, like they told us one of these new pop bands, Lordy or something, was supposed to be high res, and they gave us a CD file, and we noticed it right away, and we changed, I don't know if I don't think it was just a mistake.
Right.
So anyway, we're trying to tell everybody what they're buying, but the proof's in the listening too. I mean, if it sounds good, sounds really good, it's like that's what we're going for, so anyway.
Thanks, Ted. Appreciate that.
Questions?
Yeah, we got some questions. Yes, sir.
Maybe this was answered as a response to the first question, and if it was, and I didn't track with it, I apologize. But the rule of thumb that I've heard is that if it's recorded in PCM, it should stay in PCM. And that if it's recorded in DSD, because I understand that there's almost no DSD editing available, it's going to end up being sampled to PCM and then back to DSD again, what I've heard. So the question is, if something's natively recorded in PCM, should it stay in PCM and it's best not to go for DSD, or is there actually a benefit? Since I presume the vast majority of stuff out there, vast majority is PCM, is it best to leave it to PCM?
Well, I would say one thing real quickly, and then I'm going to defer to our panel. But one thing I would say immediately is be careful about the vast majority, because that has a tendency to overlook the first 30 years of analog recordings, which were done by the tens of thousands. It was actually an enormous, it wasn't until about 82, 83 that we began to see some PCMs done, and most of those were done from analog masters. So there's a lot more out there than you think. The rest of the question about if it's done in PCM, if, let's say, some poor schmuck, I mean some fine person, was recording, they took a Sony PCM 1610 and they thought it was cool and they recorded 16-bit 44, then the question becomes, should it be left PCM or what? Ted?
What I've discovered in building a DSD DAC recently is it's not necessarily PCM proper that's evil, it's bad math on PCM, doing filters that instead of preserving the impulses and stuff like that, they spread it around and stuff like that. That's what is the root of evil. So if you keep very high sample rates, it's all right if the words get wider. You just got to make sure you don't do something stupid in filtering it or whatever as you're finally processing it. And then for output, 1 bit is king in that it's inherently linear, it's simple. And so at the very end, getting it back to 1 bit for the output gives you a very, very clean sound. And I've been amazed at how much information is on a regular CD when you process it with DSD and play it back. So I wouldn't say that you want to go to DSD and then edit it again, and then go to DSD and edit it again. But if it's in PCM, it's not evil to convert it to DSD. It's just evil to keep doing bad conversions over and over and not paying attention to the conversions.
Rob has a point.
Just try to keep in mind that really there are sort of two different flavors of PCM that are delineated by a certain time frame. Early PCM was based upon types of converters, successive approximation analog to digital converters that actually worked at a much lower sample rate. And then those of you that probably remember around the late 80s, there were some CD players that were introduced with this 1-bit technology, which really this was the point where we crossed over from old sample rate, successful approximation type of A to D converters into a more modern 1-bit architecture was really the genesis of DSD. And so instead of capturing the signal at a lower sample rate, we captured it at a much higher sample rate, which was really DSD, and then do some math. And the only thing that's really changed is that instead of doing the math to convert that to PCM in the analog to digital converter and storing it as PCM, we've kind of now taken that 1-bit stream, and instead of storing it as PCM, think of like, you know, the people that are dying and they have their bodies frozen for posterity, and with the hopes that someday medical science will be able to help them out. That's kind of like what DSD is that instead of converting that and freezing it as PCM at the time of conversion, we're really just taking the 1-bit stream and saving it like that, with the notion that in the future, this might be the future, advances in digital signal processing will improve the playback of that stream, where maybe, you know, today it's not going to sound as good as it does 5 years from now, even given the same input stream. And I just wanted to say one other question about this transient response. One thing that is seems to be ignored, the difference between DSD and PCM, is that you may have this Nyquist sample frequency of 1.4 megahertz, but the dynamic range is only 6 bits. Again, well, there's no way to get 24-bit audio in 1.4 megahertz. There's a trade-off between the time resolution and the amplitude resolution, and so we're saving that. The transient response is there, but when you actually listen to it, you can't listen to it at that sample rate because you're only listening to 6 decibel dynamic range audio. It's when you do the low-pass filtering and the reconstruction back down into the audio frequency range where you start to pile up the bits and you get the dynamic range back. And so one of the key things is the quality of the reconstruction filters, and that ties into the impulse response and a very gentle, like Andreas mentioned, a very gentle slope, and avoiding sharp edges does, you know, preserve some of the transient response and make it sound more natural.
Jared, you had a point very quickly, and then I'm going to go to Andreas. Go ahead.
As a user, I'll give you a quick rundown how I do it. I do an analog mix at the recording session. It's, of course, you do live concerts, you don't have to edit, but I do recording sessions. So it's DSD, I record using the Grimm AD converter. I make my edits. I try, by doing an analog mix at the recording, I can make my left-right, that's my master. And I do the editing. The edits, using the Pyramix mixer, just the edit point is being converted to DXD, which is extremely high PCM. But the rest is linear as far as it's only the edit point. Now, if I have a production where I have to literally go through the mixer, that becomes DXD. It's what it is at the moment. That's
what it is.
As Rob said, the future, this will be solved. There is a difference. If I listen to my session tape and I listen to the end master in the edited master that goes to the factory that has gone to the mixer, absolutely, there's a difference. What you haven't heard the difference. I mean, I have, and this is a problem that we all know about. We're not saying it's a PCM, we're not saying it's worse, it's just, yeah, we have to solve the problem. It's what it is. We have to, this is the only way we can do it at the moment, but it's being worked on, we all know about it. Again, if I try to avoid it, but hey, musicians don't always play in tune, or they don't have to in balance.
Work with what you got.
I could work with what I got, that's right. It's still a shit lot better than what I had before. So, and you record, there are some labels that are recording in DXD, so he's already in DXD, so he can do what there's one less conversion to the sigma delta. That's also possible. But I have such a good AD converter, I don't want to do without it. So that's one solution.
Yeah, Jared already just made my point. You know, the choice from choosing between PCM and DSD is really sometimes also very practical. If you're facing a recording that requires 32 feeds with a lot of EQ and mixing, well, you don't have really a lot of choices in terms of format because your tools can only do them in PCM. If you're recording, on the other hand, direct to 2-track with 2 microphones and no editing, no mixing or any processing, well, DSD might be your choice there. So there's nothing intrinsically wrong with converting PCM to DSD because you're going from wearing a good shoe to a much wider shoe. You're not going to get any blisters. It's the other way that you get
There's something we have left out. I'd really be interested in what Ray thinks about this. First of all, Chad's point a moment ago, he's a saint, man. He cares, and he's scrupulous, and he doesn't want to sell crap to people. I mean, this is a man who has the highest standards, and he's raising our entire industry because of that scrupulous care for integrity. But not only Chad, but anybody who's doing this kind of industry production work gets masters or pseudo masters or stuff to produce from people who sometimes don't know what the hell happened before they give it to you. And then there's a second thing. Don't misunderstand this. Think of the number of great record labels that have gone from one conglomerate to another. And those people don't give a shit. They just bought it like, Sterling is giving the Clippers away for $2 billion. And it's a commodified sale that they think has an appreciable value. So you can't always know what the sonic chain is. Bless Chad that he cares, right? But the other thing I want to say, and maybe I'm the only dope who's going to stand up for this standard is, and maybe because I've slogged in the trenches maybe than all you guys have, all right? The really interesting thing about recording, as I understand it, is that every recording media has its own form of headroom. And when you can be brave enough, stupid enough, lucky enough, or accidental enough to work inside of the tolerable headroom that medium holds for you, many times you will get a magical recording, you dig. And it doesn't make a damn bit of difference whether it's a 1644 or quad DSD. They will be different. I'm not trying to equivalize them. But I'm just telling you, the X factor in recording, in my estimation, is that slight dangerous place where headroom lurks to seduce you and screw you up.
Well put by the poet of high end. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm a musician, and I got my own little recording studio, but I put a lot of money into it.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know, which was like, why did I do that? Yeah. Okay, but the point is that I'm new to DSD. My friend here turned me on to it. And I heard
I like that guy.
I know. And it's
a
like,
corrupter of youth.
Yeah, and the sound is just like, you can't put words to it. How do I convert everything in my house to DSD? In my studio, I mean, where do I start? Where do I start?
Re-record it all.
Huh?
Re-record it all.
Basically,
John, we have to slow this down. This man's passion is coming from so many people. No, his passion is coming from a musician who wants to save everything that's good, an entrepreneur who doesn't want to get hosed with his investment,
exactly,
and an audio citizen of the world trying to figure out how not to be hornswoggled.
Exactly.
Jonathan told you the truth. Tell him again.
Re-record it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What
On
piece
what? How?
Re-record it to DSD.
On what?
You know what?
Merging Horus.
What's it called?
A company called Merging.
Merging Technologies that make something called a Horus. But you know what? On the inexpensive side, I mean, there's Tascam, there's Korg.
That's right. That's
you know, the
that's
Korg does a great job, and it's affordable.
I agree with that. Korg.
So Korg converters, Korg DSD converters, is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's a DSD recorder.
You know what?
Tascam has also a...
Here's what you should do.
Chaos broke out.
This is important. What do I do?
Yeah, well, first thing I think you should do is go to Joe Kubala's room. He's got a recording that I think he and Jim Merod did of Marcellus. and get a
Theo
taste.
Marcellus is doing the Shakespeare suite in Quad.
All right, get a taste of what that sounds like, and then see if it's really what you want to do. And then from there, you can start, looking at the Korg and the other solutions out there. But it's definitely worthwhile doing.
Yeah, so it's Korg?
Korg.
And what else?
No, actually, just ask Joe what room number he's in.
Or you can ask me.
And get
As a matter of fact, just to clarify, at this event, there are several rooms where you can go and hear it for yourself. If you're saying, what's this about? What's
Ray has some.
I mean, Ray has been doing multi-channel DSD recordings for many years now. Okay, we have some things that are going on. Okay, Joe's got stuff going on in his room. Sony is doing stuff.
We actually also have a field recorder, D100, which records in native DSD as well.
Oh, okay.
And I will be receiving that next week.
You need to tackle him before he gets down the hall. Also in the positive feedback room, we're playing single, double, and quad DSD recordings. The single and double recordings are from various converters ranging from Grimm on through to Korg. We have some of the Korg conversions. And I have a series of double and quad DSDs that I personally did from 15 EPs, half-track master tape, through the merging technologies Horus.
Exactly what Ray said.
Exactly. And that represents, right now, this represents the high water mark of what you can do.
Well, there's still another choice, not to interrupt. You could also get, an ATR 102 tape machine, record to tape, and then from there you could transfer to, any of the formats you want.
Yeah, and I will also mention, for those of you who are interested on the production level, frankly, we've picked up a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of very bad production practices. There are a lot of people who rely on fixing it in the mix. And unfortunately, it means that their recording techniques up front may not be very good. They're not giving proper thought to how to do this right. And so they end up having to do a lot of EQing and fixing and cutting and pasting and all this other stuff, which unfortunately degrades the value of what they're doing. If you do it right up front, or if you do what Michael Bishop did when he had Horus, I asked him, how'd you do it? He said it was simple. We did everything in analog and just sent the feed through. We recorded the analog feed. That analog feed, not analog tape, but the analog feed was right. And the recorder did the rest. So they just recorded in quad DSD, and everything was right. That's a different kind of question. I know that Andreas has had an interest. He's one of the long-term experts in the area of tool development. Do you have a comment or two you'd like to share on production tools?
Yeah, that's a little bit a sore point. The Sonoma system that I built almost 15 years ago does a fair job for quality recordings in the meaning that they don't need a lot of processing. So it's editing, crossfades, gain control, and a little bit of DSP. But if you go beyond that, it's really a monstrous task to develop these tools. And funding really is missing on that. I hope that we will get enough momentum going with forums like this, and making people more aware that DSD is a viable format that creates more demand, and then maybe later we can develop the tools for that for the professional guys.
We have a question here.
I work for Sony. We develop all the tools for amplification, for phase correction. We had switchers, completely, master control switchers. They were very expensive to make. Then we show it in our R&D shows in Japan, but it was much cheaper to build a PCM mixing control than a DSD-based mixing control. But the tools and the information is available. All the patterns are available.
Yeah, the theory is there. We basically already 15 years ago proved the concept. We can do mixing, we can do fairly extensive mixing console functions in DSD without going to PCM. It's all basically invented. It's waiting for somebody to take it and implement it.
But Sony's best mastering material came from Roger Nichols. Roger Nichols' mastering software is magical. You guys scarfed it up. Good for you. But Roger developed that sucker. He's got magical ears. And he's got a great sounding heart.
Well, I want to, because our time is limited, I want to touch on something very quickly. For those of you who are interested, maybe you heard some of the DSD that's been around at the show, you don't have to worry about production questions. I mean, those people like myself who have a deep interest in it, those folks are involved in manufacturing, in the software, hardware, various of the people you see here, people who have to distribute it and so on. We have a deep interest in that. And Andreas and I have talked about this at length. It's not like it would take a lot of money, but it would take some. And so we may see a fix come up where we can do this. The thing that you can do as consumers is get your ears wrapped around DSD. You can download something from Channel Classics. Go to Super High Res, download something. Check in with Ray, grab some of the essays he's got there, and start listening to it. And you're going to realize, as I have, because I've been a hog. I haven't played one single PCM anything. And we got a ground loop going on our turntable that won't go away, so I've not been tempted. I've sat there for the last day and a half listening to DSD. I feel really good. I am so relaxed.
Dave, I'll fix your turntable for you, okay?
Yeah. I mean, it's good. So you need to push for this. We say this every year. If you'll get behind it, it'll happen. Because the music companies are trying to figure out how to make money with their old archives. They really are.
You know what, for the music company's sake, how many of you are downloading DSD files so far? Okay, and how many of you plan on doing it in the upcoming future?
Good.
Well, here's a coupon code. Come and get one from you and get to download it.
Sure. So I think it's a very important comment, but most importantly, it's share it. Demonstrate it. Tell your friends. Get your family. Get your kids. I mean, this is an industry that's aging overall. I mean, we've seen a difference in how consumers are adopting music. I mean, if you talk to somebody that's in their early 20s, how do they listen to music? They've probably never even heard a CD. They're listening to MP3s. They're listening to streaming music for free. They're listening to YouTube. There is no experience in high-end music or what it should be. It's a live concert or it's listening to it in a very simplified or down resolution format. So I think it's not just with DSD, but high resolution as a whole. Find the younger audience, find your kids, demonstrate it to them, show them what it's like to really experience and love music and to connect with the artist. It's a huge gap right now. I mean, we spent the last 15, 20 years now trying to simplify consumption of music. But what it's done is it's really devalued the art form. It's really devalued the content that's being produced. And it's up to us as audiophiles, as the leading edge and enthusiasts, to try and reach the consumer or your family members and try and save that quality level. I mean, a lot of the initiatives that we're trying to do at Sony within the industry with multiple companies, including the major music labels, is to educate, is to show and to be able to accept that and demonstrate to the younger audience. I mean, when we were at South by Southwest doing some, not just DSD, but high resolution demonstrations, and you'd be surprised at the reaction that kids, in their 20s, that were paying hundreds of dollars to see live music, but they never purchased music before. They've never purchased the bands that they love, that they would spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to see live in concert, but they never actually bought their music. They streamed it, they possibly stole it, or they watched it on YouTube. So it's up to us to try and help save this portion of the industry, and not just on a DSD level, but at any level above CD quality.
Excuse me, there's a question here, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Just to kind of back up into a question possibly for XSM or whoever else, because I haven't heard that gentleman. My friend's son is 21 when I had to take him to Best Buy, and luckily Best Buy had a number of headphones. Like I said, we're going to back into DSD in a moment, but and it took a while for him to get the fact that a better sounding headphone really made a difference. Now we ended up, let's say, with the PSP for a number of reasons, because he wants to wear the headphones walking around. But this is one of the ways we access some of the youth. It's not the way we think. In fact, I sometimes think the movies and surround sound engages many people in the nature of this. Oh wow, that's great. What is that? You know, sound effects. That's not music, but it's amazing how engaging it is. Surround sound. And so, if it's not the headphone which is introducing people back to better sounding music, it may be that as the surround and these effects, you know, might do it louder and gain their attention because it's happening very slowly. And I'm so encouraged by what everyone's saying. I'm not an engineer, but anything from Exosound about that?
Well, I agree with your point of view. It has to be attractive, it has to be exciting from the first time you listen to it. It has to be something that can grab you and keep you engaged. Surround is only one way to do multi-channel. It's the currently dominant way of delivering multi-channel material into home environments. With DSD, surround the way you know it is probably not possible. The challenge of processing DSD at the mastering stage is the same as what surround is doing in your home environment. Digital signal processing of the music or the concert or the movie for the purpose of good presentation in your home environment. So when you do multi-channel for the purpose of music enjoyment, for the purpose of preserving the live qualities of the sound, for the purpose of making it as close to live presentation as possible, probably you don't go the surround way. You do it the way it was described here about the processing side. You do it without processing. A straight feed from the computer through the DAC, through your analog amplifiers, and then into the room through proper speakers. It's the same concept of doing it right the first time. Instead of doing room correction, probably you can organize the room in a proper way that doesn't require correction. Then you have less DSP, then you have less loss of lifelike qualities of the sound in this room. And this is what we try to do. This is how we try to do multi-channel on the DSD side. It's a principle, it's a major difference between how you do surround with how you do multi-channel and surround DSP processing and how you do it without.
Remember this, that music is always a voice or an instrument or a group of instruments in honest three-dimensional space with air. And all of these technical things that we're talking about, knowingly or not, is our attempt to try to get back to the primitive Paleolithic experience of hearing a rock hit a rock, a voice sing with the birds. And we are so alienated in the 21st century and the 20th century from the experience of music hanging transiently, ambiently in space, that we forget the fact that, thank God, there was that magic era of recording when Wilma Cozart-Fine put up 3 microphones, and Chad's bringing her albums out, I believe you alluded to that, the Mercury, amazing albums, and the 6i Columbias made very differently. Let us not forget that all this technophile, audiophile Megillah is the attempt to recapture native sonic reality in three-dimensional human space. The best way to know what to buy and what to advocate is to listen to a guitar in a good room.
Recorded music is like canned sushi. You can't do it, but there is a difference between albacore and pet food.
Something fishy about that last comment.
And I made that up a long time ago. I have buttons from 15 years ago.
One final very quick question and then we'll wrap. Yes, sir.
Have you download DSD, you still got to have some kind of software on your computer or device to play back DSD. I spent some time in one of the rooms on the, I think the 8th floor yesterday, with one of the major for Mac software manufacturers who's introduced a new product that'll do DSD, but apparently it spits out PCM. And he says you don't have to have a DSD DAC to play this thing back. So that got me totally confused, which is why I'm in here. So
Yeah.
what do you recommend to play back native DSD that you found?
Well, first of all, the DAC itself has to be able to handle DSD. If it doesn't, you know, I could absolutely understand why someone's going to, you know, run that through and convert it to PCM so they can hear a great file. I mean, if I'm gonna buy software right now and I don't have a DSD DAC, I'm gonna still buy the highest resolution I can, whether it's from T.H.E. or whether it, you know, it's
Go ahead, Andreas.
From
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion.
Jared, bear with me, right? And I'm going to have that file for later on, whether I'm going to convert it to PCM because that's what my DAC could do. But on the other hand, you know, there are DACs that are, I mean, relatively, for what we're spending in high-end audio, relatively free that do DSD natively. So there's really no reason to own a PCM only DAC.
I understand that. What about software? I don't understand why this is a major software manufacturer. I don't understand why they're doing that.
Well, I mean, without telling us what it is, you know, I can tell you there. Oh
no. Go back to the Amara guys and they're.
You know what? Pure music. It's less expensive. It does DSD. You know, for Mac. You know, there are a lot of really good choices. So if they don't support it, don't buy it.
Yeah, actually, you know, we've done not only native DSD, but also convert to PCM in real time. And I like to say, you know, that was 3 years ago, as I mentioned, at this same place. And you mentioned Amara. I say, congratulations, they added DSD. What took them so long?
They didn't really, apparently.
Yeah.
Because our time is limited, we're going to have to roll this.
Just let me say one other thing. When I tell people to come and they ask me, do I need a DSD native DAC or should I worry about that? And this may be controversial to some of the people up here, but that's okay. I say that the difference between playing DSD on a native DSD DAC and converting to PCM in real time, as Pure Music does and has done, is smaller than the difference in sound between different DACs. And the difference in sound between different DACs is small. So it's not something really to worry about. There are some DACs. There are some DACs which actually handle the DSD playback differently and do have technical advantages in that arena. And you know, I think some people know who they are, but we shouldn't exclude people from enjoying this format because even if they listen on the computer speakers, they can listen to the DSD converted as PCM, and it sounds really, really good. And that's often how I listen to the DSD as PCM because I like to do some extra DSP, like crossovers and that sort of thing. That's always been a big problem for me about DSD, but, and I will finish that sentence at Rocky Mountain.
Just a quick comment. You know, there's a lot of confusion about what constitutes a DSD DAC. When you call that, it probably means, first of all, you can send it DSD through either ASCBU or you know, with DOP or USB. But once the DSD data is inside the DAC, what happens then is an entirely different question. A lot of chips that are used, you know, for DACs, for the lower end DACs maybe, they cannot even handle DSD at their native input. So there has to be a conversion to PCM at that point. But we're still calling the entire DAC a DSD DAC because it receives DSD. And that's where the confusion really comes. And you need to ask the question really, what happens with the DSD inside? And there's really only a handful of converters that convert DSD natively without the detour to analog.
Thanks, Andreas.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and probably within a month's time we will have a big announcement. We're going to have another major label on our website, and so we'll let y'all know as soon as we legally can mention it. But also, the other thing was, it's not easy to get the major labels. They didn't want to hear nothing about DSD. I mean, in fact, sorry, I don't want to embarrass Sony, but the new kids at Sony were like, well, we're going to, start a high-res site, and we're going to put DSD. And the person at Sony asked me, what is that? And I'm like, well, your company kind of invented it. So, I mean, forget.
It's the music side of the business, too.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We got the Sony Electronics, and they're all great. They're all in here, and they're geniuses. Just ask them. But the Sony Music, but they're figuring it out. I mean, they're figuring it out. But it's not just them. There's another major label that we're really working on hard. They only wanted to use PCM, and we're going to just slowly work on them and beat them down a bit, and sooner or later they'll see our way. And once what they want to see is the sales of DSD, and once we show them that, basically that's another interesting thing, and David will like this, is almost 80% of our sales is we offer all the formats. We're not the high-res police like DSD's the best, 192's the whatever. We don't care. We give you what we have, and you decide. We don't care. I mean, whatever you like, whatever flavor you like. You like chocolate, you like vanilla, whatever. But so we offer it all, and people can decide whatever it is they like.
What's that percentage?
Oh, sorry about that. I knew I was forgetting something. We sell over 80% DSD. So, that's the consumer deciding. So.
Jill, take some. Jill.
Hi, just one last thing. I mentioned that I had gotten involved with recording and Blueport Jazz, Mr. Jim Merod, and I have done some nice work together. I have enjoyed that. Well, we were lucky enough a few months back, 6 or 7 months ago, to be able to do a live recording in Quad DSD. So we have upstairs in our room, for anybody who's interested after this, we can go right up to Penthouse Suite 1005. And we have a song that was recorded by the artist was Delfeo Marsalis. Blueport Jazz did a recording of Delfeo Marsalis. His octet. So it's sort of a big band, only one instrument of each, but a big band sound. And it was recorded and tracked in Quad DSD, and what we have available to listen to upstairs is the mix of it in both double DSD and 2496 for anybody who might want to hear that comparison.
Two tracks both ways.
Yes. Yep. So you're invited to Penthouse Suite 1005 right after we finish.
We're around the all give these people a big
Yeah. Okay, so to close, a couple of things real quickly, because there are DSD options that are out there. So you want DSD, you can get it. Don't worry about that. We're going through a transitional period right now in which some people are trying to catch up with their chips, some people are catching up with their design, some people are trying to find price points. Be patient and let that sort out, because what I'll tell you, I don't mind being categorical. I think DSD is the best. I think that PCM was a wrong turn. I'm saying that to you after 30 years in the biz and having spent a hell of a lot of time in mastering studios, in my own listening room, listening very carefully. I don't mind going out there and saying DSD is the best. Chad is right. We'll give you whatever you want. But I can give a kid a Snickers bar too without mistaking that for steak. Okay? For the mature, for the people who really begin to understand quality, you're going to find it in DSD. And there are steps being taken now where your ears are aching to hear what guys like Chad are getting ready to send to you. And it's reasonably priced. I don't get freebies from Chad. Everything I have from Chad, I bought. I bought it at the same price you did. I'm backing it because I believe in it. Why do I believe in it? Because I'm not some dummy. Because I've been listening. I know what analog tape sounds like. I know what live mic feeds sound like. If that's what you want, then you want this. Get behind this. If you want headaches, if you want crap, if you want compression, you're in the wrong event. I mean, seriously, you talk to engineers who work with it, and they'll tell you, fix the last of the production questions, which are being worked on. Fix those production questions, and then I tell you folks, it's going to be a smooth superhighway, an Autobahn, in which production is just going to shoot through there at the ultra-high rate speed, because it'll be all of the greatest things we loved about analog without some of the problems of analog. And it will be the best that digital has to offer without all the crap. Because PCM shovel us an awful lot of bad choices. And that's not to hammer anybody, it's just to say they sound bad. Okay, so anybody wants to throw rocks can throw rocks at me. You know, send people who are apologists for PCM to me. I'll stomp on them.
But I'm going to mention one name, David Kawakami at Sony, back there 20 years ago.
Yep.
David was a pioneer. Yep.
He was right. He was right. And those of us who are producing in it, I've done transfers in it. Come up to the PFO room, you can hear single, double, and quad. It'll answer the question for you.